Hi everyone, it's Natalie here. Welcome to my channel. So this is the third video looking at the structure of the Mariel Tarot. And in this case, we're looking at the Empress and we're looking at the threes. So threes revolve around fertility, right? This is the fertility and the kind of chaotic and magical and brilliant nature of the number three as well. Yeah. So there's some little disconnects here. We also find another changed card, right? The Three of Swords changed from this love. I loved this one. Yeah. We changed from this beautiful bird into this stabbed heart with roses, which really softens the meaning in so many ways, as far as I'm concerned. But I've grown accustomed to it, and you know, it's grown on me over time. So we'll look at both of those. I feel like I want us to start with, or start by looking at the High Priestess and taking that 2 energy into the 3 energy and seeing how we got there, right? So when we look at the 2, remember in the last video I talked a little bit about, you know, the idea that we're going into the body of a woman. Okay, so we've taken a 1, you know, we've taken a singular thing. Let's go. Where's my ace? Here we go. We've got this ace. We've taken a 1. We've plugged it into a 2, right? We've gone there. And what has resulted is something that is fertile in all 3 cases, right? Even here with the swords, right? We've got this, you know, very direct intent to go through some kind of portal or gateway, okay? Here's my next one. Here we go. Less obvious here. You know, less obvious here. But you'll notice we've got in this Ace of Cups. Remember I said she's taking everything that starts at the beginning and finding ways to bring those themes back in. And she weaves them back through all of the other cards, all the way through the minors. Well, look what showed up. So in the wands, interestingly, we've got the redness of the heart revisiting us here in the 3 of Wands, right? And we've got the snake from the Ace of Cups coming to revisit us here as well. Okay, and lest we should miss this 6-pointed star that's giving reference to the fertility of the magician, the magic of the magician. Okay, so, and then finally, let's see, where's my third pairing? The Ace of Discs and the 2, right? So we've got something that's about to run through and between, or into, but through insight. So we're dealing with a lot of different possibilities and types of magic that arise from all of these different elements, combinations, possibilities, potentials. This is where the tarot starts to get extra juicy. Oh my gosh, it's so juicy. So let's look at this Empress. So we've gone from the High Priestess, which is, you know, in the first edition, another reason I love this first edition, the High Priestess is the pregnant one. She's the pregnant one, not the Empress. The Empress is expressing that fertility, right, in the form of 3. And there is a missing 1, right? We're missing we're missing the 3, right? There's 1, 2, where's the 3rd? I guess we're missing the 3rd. Yeah, I think most of you get what I mean. We've got one magician, 1 high priestess. Now there's a baby and a woman, but where's the, you know what I'm saying? So that's where my brain was. So we get to the empress and we've got 2. We're missing a 3rd. The 3rd is implied, right? Because we know that she would not have a baby and all of the, you know, all of this potential without there being, you know, without there being another individual involved. So he's implied. And he's kind of being implied a little bit through the trees here, maybe a little bit through the thorn on the rose. She's got that beautiful rose around her neck. So things are blossoming, things are fruiting, they're coming to fruition. It's full of goodness, full of goodness. We get the beauty, you know, now she's embodying the intuition, she's embodying the inspiration, she's embodying her heart, and she's embodied to a point, to a degree, you know, manifested to a degree that she's now creating in the physical realm. Right? So in the physical realm, we now have the possibility of the baby. Okay? And where we see that, again, we see that happening in the 3 of discs. And again, we need to unpack a little. Okay? We got to do some unpacking here. A lot of unpacking to do. Okay. Let us look at where, let's put our, she can sit here. Rest here for a minute, Empress. There we go. So we're going to go back to our 2 of discs, okay? Because we're kind of going 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're rolling over to the next one, okay? So where did we leave off? We left off with the 2 of discs where the eyes are covered and represented by coins. So naturally it makes sense on some level that we're now seeing the eye open. There's been some insight, right? That intuition yielded fruit. The eye is now open. All right, we're getting that snake from that, you know, from the first, from the Ace of Cups. And we're having a revisitation of the Merkaba from the magician. From the magician. Where'd he go? Here he is, right? So we're getting, we're referring back to another part of the movie, and we're folding some of those symbols back in a way that we can continue to make use of them, okay? We're also getting the pumping of the heart and the redness of that heart, right? From here. And we're striking, you know, we're seeing things more clearly. We're seeing where to move, where to go. We're holding space between 2 opposites. We've also got that crossing here, which is the same kind of crossing we had in our 2 of Swords. Okay, but now instead of that energy being frozen, we've unlocked it. It's now hot. The heat that started here has moved all the way up. It's opened up the eye of, you know, of the seeker. And they're looking at what those possibilities could be, holding space for both, and gaining insight about where next to go. Where next that creative energy needs to be. And they're going to need that insight. Here's why. Because now that same type of fertility that went through a portal, added 1 and 2 together, and came up with 3, right? There's such beauty in numbers. I love the way that works. Has now yielded power through the use of word, through thought, that thinking power, that thought power, where in the 1 and the 2, wow, I really needed to organize my cards better. Okay, so where we had potential that was frozen, right? But focused, intent, ready to go, ready to roll, like a point of a sword. Okay, the sword points the way through, but nothing happens, right? Nothing would happen if that sword points through this space. Why? Because there's no catalyst. The heart, right, is the missing catalyst that we need in that too. Without the heart, now this is where it gets really interesting. We could say that without a catalyst, if we're moving forward, when you put these 2 swords, we've got these 2 swords crossed. Get it? Do you see what she's done here? It's genius. And we've got a third one that got stuck through it, and it hits this. It's directed, it's intentional, and the recipient of this, whether it's good, bad, otherwise, right? This is very neutral. This card is very neutral. I don't know if anybody sees the face up here looking, but it's not, it's being witnessed up here in the clouds. Whatever the intent is, the little bird in mid-flight has managed to grasp, hold on to, and stop the movement forward of these swords. And the outcome of this is very interesting, could be very interesting. Either this third one will continue and pierce the bird's pierce the bird's wing and knock it to the ground, and it may risk impaling itself on these swords, or we have the sword moving through, but being caught by the bird, who will then, of course, potentially tumble to the ground with the swords, or will come towards the ground, right? Wings are outstretched, so the ability to, I'm stretching out my wings here, you can't see. But, the bird will then have the possibility to kind of drift toward the ground and drop the swords so as not to be wounded by them, right? But still have the ability to rest on the ground and take in what just happened. But the only reason that the bird can do this is because the bird has chosen, instead of running, flinching, trying to get away from, these are swords that were sent with intent, right? They're words, thoughts, intention that reached their recipient, their intended recipient, and the bird is then able to make a choice, but only because of accepting them. The bird has accepted what has come forward towards them and figured out how to maneuver in the moment. And it's through that maneuvering that this wise, intelligent little bird is able to drop the swords or find a way through, potentially without injury, through acceptance. Okay, this is coming at me. All I can do at this point without risking further bodily injury is grab on and say, okay, this is here now. Now what? Right? Okay. I'll put those to one side. Oops, sorry. I'm not done with the swords yet, of course. Now, remember what I said about the heart. So, I can't remember quite where I started with that, but oh yes, the heart, right, the heart. So, you know, you take this sword, you know, we imagine this as just a regular Ace of Swords, RWS style. We send that sword through this portal opening. It doesn't go anywhere. Why? Because of the missing catalyst. What is the missing catalyst? It's the heart. This tiny little red dot right in the center of that bug where we would put it on a human being if we anthropomorphized it. Okay? Now, the bird is the last one. The missing catalyst with all three swords in it. Okay. Now, I'm thinking that because of the need to figure out how this moves forward without death, Marie White shifts us into a different place through the use of these roses. So the roses offer us the potential for healing and growth in a moment where those swords reached their intent and their intended purpose and had this impact on us. There's possibility for growth and transformation. Okay. So now we can move on to the Three of Cups. So that was there. This one I feel like is a bigger leap. It's a much bigger leap. Because she's moved us into landscape. You know, there's the parity between these is not as easy for me to see. But supposing that the heart is pumping, right? There's the purity of intent and emotion that gets the heart pumping and activated and moving, that energy of the heart, right? Which happens in the two. Well, what happens, I guess, is that it spills, these are cups, it's water, it spills over into lavish emotion, right? It's lavish emotion, tremendous emotion. And we also have this idea that it's come from one, right? It started with one pool, one river. And even though it's split into three, here it's all going back to the same source. So there's a unity in this card as well, in the way that heart, our heart space, even when it gets bigger and bigger and it begins to include others, right? It's still, at the end of the day, describing one pool of water, because it will go back into what we see here in the four, which is the ocean, etc. Right? But she's very elemental with this in this one. Yeah. You know, it is the fertility of opening the heart to include another, right? The heart pumps as another one comes in. It brings forth the possibility of more than one, you know, three. But it's the path of water. It's got to, you know, this is where we really start to see the paths begin to differentiate as their own, and where she works harder to bring these concepts together. It's easier in some numbers than it is in others. And it's, you know, for better or for worse, it's just, this is the working of the deck. It's not, you know, it's not 100% perfect all the time, and that's okay. So, and there may be connections that I haven't discovered yet and that I've missed. For example, this Three of Cups includes this kind of green landscape and carries forward the coloration from the discs. Which I think is fascinating. The idea too that this intuition that's in the belly often leads into greater sense of emotion, or of utilizing the feelings in a way that's more transpersonal than personal. Yeah, that occurs to me as well. And then finally, of course, here in the Three of Discs, we see that that fertile collaboration, of the empress really realized. Yeah. Fertile creativity, fertile realization. Yeah, all the good stuff. And then, of course, if we want to get really conceptual, which I think is a good idea, if we think about, and it is a very kind of, it's also very sexual, and that's part of how she's operating with this, and it's part of how these numbers seem to operate themselves. We're fertilizing something that moves forward, right? So the wands do it in a very pure form, in a very simplistic, I should say, form. Just going to shift that a little bit. This, something is pierced, right? This also, I think probably no accident that this looks a little bit like a sperm about to fertilize an ovum, right, with the snake head. Then we have, of course, we're looking at the evolution of the three, the need for acceptance that something has reached its intended purpose, right? This is where, too, we start to have a trouble, potentially with, and here's I got to back up and slow down. So here, what was shot forth reached its intended target. The target is not annihilated because it has chosen to accept. Okay? That's what we get with the bird. With the Three of Swords in a more traditional format here, I think the reason that Marie White did it like this is because then we get, the three swords reaching their intended target, piercing, fertilizing, and new growth that comes out of it. Okay, so she is intending heartbreak. She's intending all the things that come along with this Three of Swords, and she's very interested in the magic and the movement, of the tarot, and of depicting that in such a way that you can't get stuck here. And I do often feel in this depiction of the Three of Swords, I get stuck there. It's hard to see how that doesn't just lead to death. You pierce the heart, someone dies. But what if the piercing of the heart is something that serves to open it? It's a metaphor, simply, for opening it further, more deeply, in order for new growth to erupt out of it. Depends on how you want to look at it, I guess. What happens through that, if through that acceptance, through surviving the difficulty of either of these challenges here, your cup runneth over. It's elation. The Three of Cups is total elation and joy of having survived, the difficulty of creativity, right? Of creating something new, of getting it this far, you know, from inception to aiming and purpose to it's going to come forth. It's going to happen. This is going to work, right? This is going to work. We can do this. That's one way to look at it. And then, of course, the joy and elation of something being fertilized and literally coming to fruition as a baby or a family. You know, the ultimate collaboration of three. You know, where three brings the possibility of something new, you know, being brought forth into the world. So I hope, and of course then you can see when I'm lifting, let's see, let's pull up all of these threes. When we look at the way this evolves, we've moved into landscape and open space, but we're carrying forth the color from the Three of Discs into the Four of Wands. So she's carrying this one, it goes from this, it goes to this, then it goes to this, and then to this. Right? And how do we see that taking place? So, yeah. It's going to be, you know, it takes a lot of imagination, I think, but to make these jumps, and yet I feel like they're just there. You know, I do feel like they're there. Sometimes in her guidebook, she does describe this evolution, you know, of the process, and sometimes she doesn't. Sometimes it's more overt, sometimes it's not. So, yeah. So we do our best to look at what's there and to make some of those connections on our own. And I feel like a lot of them, as I have contemplated and talked them through in my mind or, you know, in multiple videos or video attempts, it does seem to come forward in a way that makes great sense. Yeah. I've also thought of, this just occurred to me, I have also contemplated the idea that the tree branches in the Three of Cups are where the bird lands. And it allows all of the swords to drop into the water below. Again, fertilizing in order to bring forth the Three of Discs. That's also a thought I've had. Or that the heaviness of this cloud has also fed, you know, the rain. And the relief, you know, the kind of relief that washes over you when you've landed and safely and it's all okay. Just some thoughts. Because I feel like a lot of these meanings are here in these cards. I have definitely had them come up in readings, working out that way as well. So, yeah. And again, this is not the deepest dive I've ever done. You know, we could begin unpacking some of the symbols again that you find in separate cards. The Three of Discs is full of, you know, mudras, symbols drawn in on hands and foreheads. And there's always a lot to uncover in these cards. There's always a lot. So anyhow, that is the threes, and I will see you again here for the fours. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye.